So, Dr. Copeland, we're thrilled to have you here. We love that every third Tuesday we get an opportunity to throw some questions to you from our viewers that are from a more medical point of view, but we love that you take into consideration all the behavior things that are going on as well. So I'm going to go ahead and launch in if it's okay with you.
All right.
Okay, Dr. Copeland, do you recommend glutamate to help heal the gut? And they said thank you.
Okay, lots to think about, and the shortest answer is no, probably not. But it would be important to look at what signs of gut problems their child is showing. We do need glutamine and glutamate in our body, but just supplementing with glutamate in and of itself, there's actually people who are known to be sensitive to glutamate, and it can cause symptoms. And probably the most famous is known as MSG, monosodium glutamate, which is a natural flavor enhancer. It used to be put in a Chinese food, Oriental food a lot, and it's still used in like McDonald's chicken nuggets because it makes food taste good, but people can be really sensitive to monosodium glutamate. It can induce migraine, headaches, even a potential risk for seizures, aggravate acid reflux. Probably the question came from, we know our own body makes glutamate from the amino acid glutamine, and that is important in the lining of the gut and protecting the gut. But it has to be our own body doing it naturally. Just supplementing with glutamate doesn't seem to do the trick.
Okay, good answer. All right, and moving on, we're talking a lot about gut today. Hi, doctor. I'm not sure if you answered this yet, but is there a test to see how much the GI tract has been damaged? My child had neutropenia and chronic ear infections. I'm probably saying that wrong, but you'll correct me.
You said it right. Neutropenia is a low white blood cell count.
Okay, good to know. So a lot of antibiotics cycled the first years of her life. Also, Kawasaki disease. We have since done the GFCF diet for a couple of years to help the healing, and some autism symptoms got better after that. I want to know if I need to put her back on the diet and if that would be beneficial or if her gut is already healed enough. She is currently getting B12 injections every other day, and there is definitely a difference when I skip a few days or a week versus the day she got the shot and after.
Okay, another tough question, and the science is mixed on that, and you and I were talking about that before the show. We don't know that all children on the autism spectrum need the gluten-free, casein-free diet, but I know you were sharing your son definitely improved in his autism symptoms and started talking more. It depends on what symptoms she may be showing in her GI tract. But if there's no the best test actually as to how well the GI tract is working is if the child's growing appropriately. So if she's growing well, both in height and weight, and they're within the normal range, and if her stool pattern is relatively normal and healthy, no chronic watery diarrhea, no severe painful constipation, no blood in the stool, that's the most natural test about how well the GI tract is working without having to have invasive medical tests. Now, if she's having any of those symptoms that I mentioned, not growing well or alternating constipation, diarrhea, other problems, then it's worth talking with her doctor, and they might start with some screening blood tests to look for inflammatory markers and so forth. But it may be that her gut is healed enough she doesn't necessarily have to go back on the gluten-free, casein-free diet. So I'd appreciate your input, Shannon, here.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and as I'm listening to you, it's making me think maybe I need to do more with my son. My son has been on the GFCF diet since he was 3, and we've had a couple of times where he's had something that wasn't GFCF by accident. We weren't trying to set up a challenge, but something happened. Somebody fed him something that they thought was GFCF, and then clearly we discovered later on that it wasn't, and he did have reactions. So we've stuck to it. It sounds like your child, and there's like no way that you wouldn't have known when we've seen things happen. So it sounds like your child made the transition okay, and if you're not having a whole lot of behaviors, it's significant to me about the methyl B12 shots because if you've gone a couple of days and you see a difference in your child, that suggests to me that that's still something that's working.
Right, I would agree with that, yeah.
And because you're probably hearing the language, but I'm wondering if there's any kind of a gut reaction. I'm wondering just exactly what you said about, is there diarrhea or is there constipation or is she holding her stomach or rocking in pain? And I would also say too that there are other diets besides the GFCF to try if you're having severe gut issues. Like that wouldn't even be the first one that I would try if it was severe gut issues.
Yeah, with severe bloating and gas, Stanford University has actually done a lot of research documenting the benefits of what's called a low FODMAPs diet, foods that are low in FODMAPs, staying away from onions and Brussels sprouts and certain things that can really make certain people very gassy and bloated.
And for people who've had like severe gastrointestinal issues, I've heard great success with the GAPS diet, which is a pretty intense thing for a family to go through. Like you have to be really prepared to go through it. But it's kind of similar to a paleo diet. It's a lot of bone broth. So anyway, I would be interested to know, like you said, what else is going on. Because diet for me is a big part of it. If we're not eating the right stuff, for us, for our individual organisms, all kinds of things can go haywire. The next question we have, it says, for the wonderful unicorn, after swimming, my girl's leg/ankles get red and itchy. What can this be? It goes away after a while. She really enjoys the water, and we appreciate any direction, and thank you for your advice.
Okay, it sounds like it's quite probably either chlorine or bromine sensitivity, since those are what we usually use in swimming pools to decrease bacteria count. And chlorine sensitivity with the skin is pretty common. So to help her continue to enjoy the pool and have the same amount of pool time, it's just important to wash off with clean water immediately after getting out of the pool. Try to get the chlorine off the skin. And if the red bumps and itchiness kind of last for more than 15, 30 minutes, they could once in a while use a little bit of over-the-counter hydrocortisone cream, just very lightly, where the red rash is. That may help. There's been some promotion of this swim spray that's vitamin C in water. It might be overpriced. I haven't seen scientific studies proving there's an advantage of vitamin C in water versus just washing off with water. But those are some things they could do to try and decrease the redness and itchiness.
Okay, and then if that's what it is, the chlorine or the bromine, would it then not happen if they went into a saltwater pool?
It may be less, yeah. It depends.
I know, we live in Southern California where there's pools everywhere and there's lots of things to choose from. And, you could try it and see if she goes into a saltwater pool and see if you get the same thing. I know people who've gone to great expense, and it is expensive to change their pool over from being a chemical pool to a saltwater pool. But if it's something that's within your budget and your daughter really enjoys swimming, it could be something you could consider. Okay. Hi, Shannon. Please ask Dr. Copeland, a.k.a. the unicorn, when we changed my son's probiotic from Culturelle to Claire, his nose gets really runny. Same thing if we attempt a parasite cleanse, and they cite a product that I've never heard of before called Humaworm. His nose gets jammed so bad we have to stop the herbs after a day. Is the runny nose from die-off or from allergies from the new probiotic/herb? And they said, thank you.
Hard to say for sure, but I would put the biggest emphasis on possible allergy, especially if it's very clear-cut, no runny or stuffed nose when they're on the Culturelle or not taking the Humaworm. And every time they introduce the Claire probiotic or the worm, then it's back to major nose problems. I think it's more likely an allergy. There's something in those new products that probably the child's not tolerating.
You know what's interesting to me is that if it had been the reverse of that they were changing from going Claire to Culturelle, that I would have readily understood because the Claire probiotic does not have any dairy products in it, and the Culturelle has a small amount of dairy in it.
Right.
So that would have made more sense to me. So I'm wondering if they got it reversed. But I will say this, that we use a Claire probiotic on a regular basis, and it's a lot more powerful.
Yes, I was going to make that point. Culturelle is mainly Lactobacillus GG. It's apart from the fact that if the child's, casein sensitive to dairy, if they're not casein sensitive, it's very mild and gentle, and it's even used in the first year of life. Pediatricians will recommend it. Claire has many good probiotic products, but some of them are very, very strong. They're high potency.
Yeah. So, and like I said, I don't know about the humor worm, but very interesting. And I'm not about giving, even if it takes a while to get used to them, I'm not about making my child more uncomfortable.
Yeah.
In an effort to make them better. Okay, so next question here. Hi, Dr. Unicorn. I'm telling you, it's sticking.
It's caught on.
What does sulfur breath and yeasty breath smell like? Does sulfur breath mean the body cannot handle sulfur foods like onion? Are there other symptoms if sulfur foods are the issue? Thank you to the wonderful team at autism-live. So appreciate with your generosity and passion to share the knowledge, and that's coming from our haircut mom.
Okay, so here we're talking about issues with the breath, and so in a general category of bad breath or halitosis, and it depends on if that is, again, associated with other symptoms in the body, like elsewhere in the GI tract, bloating, gas, abdominal pain, acid reflux symptoms like heartburn, constipation, diarrhea, or if it's just mainly the breath, halitosis. It turns out, just speaking of halitosis, just in and of itself, without any other associated symptoms, it is related to how bacteria and microorganisms in our mouth break down the food products, and they do make these volatile sulfur compounds. That's the main constituent of bad breath, is sulfur compounds. But that in and of itself doesn't mean that we don't tolerate high sulfur foods. We all need sulfur in the body, as sulfur is a vital mineral, and it's important in so many aspects of our body. But if there are other associated GI symptoms like bloating and gas, like onions, as I mentioned earlier, are a high FODMAPs food. And certain of the cruciferous vegetables like cauliflower are also high FODMAPs and can give excessive gas and bloating and then burping up. And that would be a different story. That would suggest not so much a sulfur intolerance as maybe a FODMAPs food intolerance. You need to lower those kind of FODMAPs foods. It's important. There's been some studies in autism again, emphasizing the need for sulfur. The sulfation process is part of the body's natural detoxification system. And there's a few studies that have suggested kids on the autism spectrum can actually waste sulfate in their urine, and they may benefit by sulfate supplementation. And it turns out Pellegrino water as a mineral water, is a natural source of some good sulfate, which might help detoxify and actually improve constipation. And that's in contrast to sulfite, which is more in artificial foods. It's kind of a preservative, and we don't want too much sulfite. It actually interferes with the sulfation detoxification. So a lot of canned goods have sulfite in them. Dried fruits might be dried with sulfites, I mean. Sulfates are good in autism. Too many sulfites, not good.
That's so interesting. I grew up in Saratoga, New York, which is famous for its mineral water, and
Uh-huh.
they have springs all around the town that you can go and get, and it turns the rock around it orange, and it smells like eggs. And I always thought it tasted terrible as a kid. I
Ugh,
just hated it. But my child, like a big treat for him is to drink something like a Perrier, or when we can go someplace and get a Saratoga the water. That's a big treat for him. He loves
wow.
that. So that's very interesting. I didn't realize that it was good for him. And I
Yeah.
also am thinking about this when he was little. My son had yeast issues, and
Mm.
you could smell it on him from a mile away. If you smelled his head, he smelled like
Uh-huh.
fresh baked bread. If you smelled
Wow.
his feet smelled like bread.
Uh-huh.
And his breath, frequently, he would be ridiculous. We called him the happy little elf because he would act like he was drunk. And if you smelled his breath, it smelled like he had been drinking some sort of sweet brandy. It had
Wow.
like this fruity alcohol smell to it. It was fascinating. And then we did with our team, we did some yeast treatment with him. So he was on an antifungal and a yeast, a nystatin kind of a thing. It was diflucan. And I remember the doctor saying to me, now you want to watch for, we eliminate a lot of things from his diet. And he said, you want to watch because a day will come when we will know that we've broken through and it's time to stop the medicine. And I said, how will I know? And he said, you will know because the smell will change. And it was
Wow.
fascinating because the smell died down on the yeast, and then all of a sudden, there was a day when he had bad breath. My kid, who'd always smelled like, apricot brandy, all of a sudden had bad breath. And that was when we stopped the medication. It was fascinating to me. And I hadn't really
Wow.
thought about it until you were talking about this. So would that have been a sulfur thing? Or I remember somebody saying that ketosis, when they go into ketosis, that is bad breath and
You
smells.
can get an odor to the breath with ketosis, and if there's significant ketosis, like a child who's developing type 1 diabetes, they'll have a fruity smell to them, but they'll look really sick, they'll be lethargic, and so forth. I would think it more had to do with yeast breath, and then the yeast breath resolving,
Yeah.
and some natural bad breath broke through and may have implied that he needed more sulfate, which may be why
Fascinating.
he likes the mineral
He
water.
loves the mineral water. There we go. Okay, I hope we have time for this one last question. Hi Shannon, they're writing to us from Rochester, New York. Have 2.5-year-old, got diagnosed in October. We are doing ABA therapy. They want CARD to be a part of their journey, and they're on the waiting list. I want to know, do you suggest any biomedical treatments? Now we are on the gluten-free and dairy-free diet and multivitamins. And but can you please? They want a place to be able to reach me so that they can tell us more. But I'm wondering for somebody just starting out, because I have said before on the show that ABA was the thing that did the most amazing stuff with my son, but we got him healthy before we started ABA, and then I felt that really contributed to our success. And we did that with some biomedical treatment. And for my son, the gluten-free, casein-free diet was good. A little later on, we tried a little bit of the specific carbohydrate diet as well. And we did a modified Feingold where we took all the artificial colors out. But I'm wondering for you, Dr. Copeland, what advice you have to somebody who is on a waiting list, getting some ABA now, but on a waiting list for CARD. What would you recommend?
Well, I think I like to go with the simplest, most straightforward, especially in a 2-year-old. So I'd look at the degree of artificial sugars and artificial dyes. I think that's a natural to get out of the diet. They've already done the gluten-free, casein-free, and they can see if their child is one of the children with ASD who respond. Apparently, not all children. There's some scientific research showing not all children with autism spectrum show a response to gluten-free, casein-free, but they've already started that, and they can see if they get a response, and it can be a very healthy diet, especially if you don't go to gluten-free products that are mostly desserts. You want healthy products with a good amount of protein and fresh fruits and vegetables and so forth. So eliminating those artificial dyes, eliminating excess sugar, maybe considering a probiotic. Like you said, optimize the physical health. I think that's natural, it's inexpensive, it's something that we might do for any of our children to optimize their physical health.
Absolutely. I love, and I totally agree with all of that. I think that cleaning up the diet is so that it's healthy stuff, and it was so vital for us. There was no sugar in his diet, and there were no artificial colors and flavors. And what about organic? I really encourage families to go as
Yes.
organic as they can afford.
Yes, I recommend that too, and that's coming out in large scale scientific studies from the UC Davis Mind Institute. That we know that exposure to pesticides is a risk factor for autism. We know that children with autism spectrum show subtle neuroinflammation. We know that pesticides could relate to neuroinflammation. And we know that the largest source of pesticide exposure for children is in the food.
Yeah.
So going organic, avoiding the dirty dozen foods that really attract pesticides, I think is very important.
Absolutely. And you're in Rochester, New York, so you have a lot of organic farms around you. It should be fairly cost effective for you to be able to get some good organic food going on there. And yes, and I love that you brought up the dirty dozen, because those are the things that if you can't afford to get the organic one, cut them out. Cut them out. Like bell peppers, none of us need to eat a bell pepper unless it's
Celery,
organic ever again.
yeah, certain foods, nectarines, and
And
so forth.
it tends to be the things that are thinner skinned.
Yeah,
So, and definitely all the apple juice and applesauce that you put into your child, get them organic. It's really
yes,
inexpensive to make that
cherries,
shift.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Dr.
So
Copeland,
apples, cherries, blueberries. Yeah.
yes, thank you so much for
Thank
taking the
you,
time
Shannon.
to be with us. We adore you.